welcome everyone. This is Byron White. I'm here. I think Casey is perhaps dialing in as well. I think Casey might be here, but I can't hear him.
I am here. Byron, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now, although you're kind of wavy. You're in a nice tunnel.
Okay, is that a little bit better? I might redial in just to make sure we have better audio.
Yeah, you're getting quite a bit of echo, which I'm sure other people are hearing as well.
Okay, I'll redial.
One from my, well, you might want to call back in on another line or some other way you can dial in.
I'll do that.
Okay, see you in a bit. So we're going to start in just a couple of minutes, everyone. My name is Byron White. I'm the founder of Idea Launch and Writer Access, and I'm happy to be delivering a presentation to you today on a touchy subject called pricing quality content and writing services. And so I'm joined today with Casey. I don't think Ken could make it today. If Ken's here, chime in. But for the most part, I think Casey and I are going to walk you through some logic and let you tune into a webinar that we're quite passionate about and have spent quite a few years trying to figure out how to price writing and writing services. So I'm going to probably begin the presentation in about 30 seconds or so. I'll let Casey try to dive back into the call. And a couple of things up front that I'll explain to everybody and ask everyone. Number one, I'd love to hear some feedback and any input that you might have on the pricing guide that I sent you. If you have questions, please list them in the right column. There's a way to enter questions. And I'm just looking at a couple of them right now. Someone's hearing the echo still. I assume you're not hearing an echo from me, that you were hearing an echo from Casey. So you might just want to confirm that using your questions on the right side.
Byron, I'm back on the line and I don't hear the echo. Is it better now?
I think it's better.
Okay.
I can hear you okay.
Okay, great.
And so let's have no echo here, Byron. Someone's saying thank you for that. So I think we're pretty good. Let's have at it, as they say. So a couple ground rules. Number one, I'd love to hear your questions about the pricing guide or any questions you have. Please list them as you're listening to the presentation. We'll gang them all up in the end, and I'll walk everyone through the pricing and any questions that anybody has. And second of all, I love getting feedback on these. You can either send me an email to byron@writeraccess.com or byron@idealaunch.com, or you could tweet me any feedback on this presentation. It's really important that I hear both good news and bad news or anything you want to say. Really appreciate the effort. It helps motivate me. We'll be talking about that a little bit today, actually, matter of fact. So without further ado, I'm going to chime in and really walk you through the presentation today. We're going to go through, this is the 34th webinar that I've given on the content marketing topic, and I always begin this webinar by going through a quick spin of what is content marketing to get it to all get on the same page. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what is quality content, and I've got a fairly short presentation today, so we'll then move over to conversation and ask Casey to dive into this and share some thoughts that he might have on what I'm about to present in the guide that was distributed to everybody. And then we'll talk about how to price quality content. So without further ado, what is content marketing? It is, by definition, the art of listening to your customer wants and needs. That, by the way, I would argue is the hardest thing to do and something that needs to be, shall we say, taken to the next level. And I hope that someone on the phone can figure out a great way to do that. We've seen focus groups that, in my opinion, are a small sampling of people that are not necessarily engaged the way someone reading content would be. We've seen certainly listening in to your own website with search boxes. We've seen, analytics become a player of listening to what customers are doing on your website. But how do we get under the skin of a target audience? I think that's something that we're going to need some breakthroughs on. So maybe somebody has some ideas there. It's, of course, delivering content to them in a compelling way. Where you're going to also hear me talk a little bit today about the content asset portfolio being much larger than it ever has been. And the question is, how do you reach these customers? And it's very hard to do because they're orbiting at high speeds. You need to catch them well after they leave your website, and you need to try to figure out how to keep them coming back for more with information that they want and need. Downloads, deals, geo-targeting offers, retweets, what do they like, what do they love, what are they registering with you. That's a really hard thing to do, but it's a critical element of content marketing. And of course, A/B testing and multivariate testing are key components in learning what causes people and motivates them to take action, particularly on the web. Remember that A/B testing has its roots in direct mail, and it has been around for quite some time. So, digging deeply into that science to see what works and what doesn't work is a critical component to content marketing. Conversion path is something that very few people are in tune with, partly because the technology is very expensive to actually track conversion path influence throughout a website. And what I'm referring to here is influencers, like you're on the homepage of a website and you go click on a blog and you like what you've read, you therefore go buy their products and services. That blog post perhaps influenced the decision-making process. And we're still newbies at that, in my opinion. There's very few technology. Google has some limited conversion path analysis that you can stream into content analysis and try to gauge influence of content, but in my opinion, it needs to be vastly improved. So the path of engagement will also grow with interest. And of course, it's working with great writers that understand your goals. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, so we'll tune into this. But what are your goals? Number one, that's hard to define these days. Number two, how do you coach and train a writer on delivering on your expectations? And of course, you need to work with writers that know how to engage readers and keep them coming back for more, I like saying. And that involves experience, expertise, skill, style flex, which we can talk. I actually ran a webinar last month talking about style flex for those of you that were on it. Thank you very much. For those of you that weren't, there's a recording of not only this webinar, but all previous webinars that I've done that you can find on Idea Launch. So look for that. So that's sort of a quick introduction to content marketing. Now let's sort of dive a little deeper into quality content. And these are two wonderful quotes here that you can read, but honestly, creating quality content is very, very challenging, very difficult to do. And we're going to go through some methodology with why that is the case, but the net of it is lots of complexity, and you're going to see really why it's becoming more and more challenging to deliver on quality expectations for content. When we look at the traditional publishing workflow, gather ideas, develop stories, and publish content. It was fairly simple, fairly flat. Typically, publishers, if you will, were controlling the story and controlling the media and also controlling the distribution channels, and therefore had a fairly systematic approach by which you could accomplish. And Casey, could you just turn your phone on mute for me? Thanks, appreciate that. So what we see now, however, is the content marketing workflow is quite complex. It starts with a content planning process typically that involves competitive intelligence and keyword research and style guide development, auditing your current website, comparing it against your competitors. Very, very intense strategic work that has to be done before any content is created. Next, of course, content creation. You need to perform a content audit and research topics and put together editorial calendars. Sampling content from different writers is key to find the style that you like. And finally, you can create content. But all the content needs to be optimized, which is typically handled up front with a content plan, an SEO plan that you develop. But keyword silos need to be developed. The content needs to be scored for SEO strength, verified for originality to avoid duplicate issues, popular now with Panda and Penguin and other challenges that we need to face. In building link popularity, both internal and external link building popularity, optimizing your tags, your images. I mean, I'm only halfway through talking about the content marketing workflow. I won't take the time to talk about the rest, but you get the idea. This is a complicated undertaking that involves multiple people, and it's very key to work through that. What we're also seeing is the content portfolio is equally intense, and no longer are we just publishing articles for publications. The content asset portfolio is greatly increased, which means different types of writing need to be applied to different types of assets, which adds complexity to the overall process of arriving at quality content and paying a fair price for it. We've seen writing styles need to increase. I like using the word style flex, writing style flex. Writers are being asked now to create content with a wide variety of styles. The tone of voice is also critical, as you'll see in a second. I still am finishing up the world famous, it's taken 2 months in development now to get this writing style guide together. But we should be able to release that early next week, and everyone will actually be getting a link to download it. It was on the last webinar and this webinar too. So if you do look closely at blog writing styles, also more complexity for the writer to have to adapt to, more skill sets required. Different types of blog writing are required for different customers and clients, and this involves different skill sets and training. Tone of voice we talked quite a bit about as well, but these are all very different tones of voice that are required to talk to different target audiences, all of which require different skill and necessary for success. And the specifications and requirements are also changing that customers are placing upon writers these days. Infusing brand values in content, addressing specific target audience, voice and tone we talked a little bit about, punctuation and syntax, almost editorial skills that are expected from writers creating content, typically 2 different disciplines I might add. Industry jargon and expertise is required, different style selections as if you're picking off a menu, and of course legal requirements could vary from customer to customer. And on top of all of that, content creation is now typically involving search engine optimization, which can involve the whole maze of different skill sets required and demanded by customers for the final version of a content asset being created. Who's going to do that work? What are the skill sets involved? Does the writer do that? Typically in our world at Writer Access, the customer's doing this work, but more and more, I was just talking with one of our writers yesterday that by default actually delivers an image that he finds on the web and a title tag for every piece that he delivers, and he attaches that in the notes field to the content asset that he delivers back to the client, kind of as an added value. And we were discussing that, saying, gosh, you think I should keep doing this for free? And my answer was, no, you shouldn't. But maybe do it for the first couple of times. You don't really know if your customers want that or need that. But you can see that writers are feeling the pressure to want their content to be successful, to want it to be optimized, to want it to be found by the search engines of my readers. Performance goals has also changed. It's no longer, does this editor like the quality of the content? It's how's that content performing? Is the content I'm publishing on my website that I'm buying from some marketing platform or from freelance writers or from our in-house writers, is that content performing? What's the ROI measurement? Is it improving my organic listing positions and my conversion rates? Is it engaging? Is it sticky content? Is it driving more leads? Is it decreasing my user acquisition cost? What's going on with this content? Somebody's got to measure it and track it, and that's becoming critical. So a quick summary of all this, is that, quality writing needs to do a lot of things. Find, the best content asset that becomes a deliverable. You need style flex for the audience you're writing for. You need to align with the brand position the client is trying to tell you about. You need to speak, the audience language and offer a consistent voice. Of course, your syntax and your punctuation, your grammar need to be spot on. You need to adhere to requirements and specifications that are laid upon you, and order instructions and guidelines, and you need to mind legal restrictions, which can also be a big stack of 1 to 5 pages of legal documentation of what you can and can't say and do. And the net of it is all this stuff takes time, and it takes a workflow. And that's what's challenging about pricing content these days. I just want to make an observation here before we move on to the actual pricing part of this presentation. I think the biggest challenge now is education and training. traditional curriculum is like stuck in old school thinking of bringing graduate students in journalism onto the marketplace now without some of these skills that I'm talking about here. Creative writing, used to be fun and interesting and engaging, but now that's been unfortunately, overpowered by all these new requirements and standards, where I think some of those writing fundamentals are critical and important for engagement. I'm actually a fan of poetry and writing. For those of you that have listened to quite a few of these resume webinars, I actually enjoy poetry. I read my wife poems all the time, for example, and I spend probably 60% of my day writing, believe it or not. So I love these traditional skills, but I'm very concerned with the writers that we onboard, for example, at Writer Access. There can be dozens and dozens of writers that apply with us. Very few of them have demonstrated some of these new skill sets that I've talked about today. Where is the curriculum going to go? Are there classes going to be taught on content marketing and search marketing, inbound marketing, PPC ad creation, engagement, analytics, tracking? I don't see that now in the colleges, and it's very concerning to me as my son is about to enter college next year. All right, so moving right along, only a few slides left, I promise. So by now, all of you have the writing pricing guide. We put a lot of time into it. A lot of people helped me with it, Casey being one of them. I've got a couple other people that really kick the tires of this, and we try to cobble together our assessment, if you will, of what's happening in the marketplace and what needs to happen, and really helping to provide a document that both writers and customers could use together to help determine fair pricing for a particular project. So let me sort of walk you through some of the methodology for the guide, and I'm going to show you a couple things that are not in the guide that I want your feedback on, because I think they should be in the guide. So the first thing to note is we've tried to sort of nail 3 pricing methods, if you will. The first one is pay per word. It's most popular. Most of the online marketplaces that Writer Access competes with use this as the core model. It's easy to place orders. There are low rates, so it's attractive. There's light instructions that need to be filled out. And, let's face it, customers are using this for, blog posts and articles and lighter content that's helping to fill that void that everyone needs these days, namely a steady stream of content being published on your website to prove and validate that you're alive, that you're worthy of continued listing positions at Google and the major search engines, that you care about your customers' wants and needs, and you're trying to address those with content that you're publishing. So, the pay-per-word model is working. We've built a business model around it. The other option, of course, is pay-per-hour, and pay-per-hour is traditional. It's typically aligned with in-office work. The rates are typically aligned with experience and requirements for compensation, and there's hourly control of it, so it's also appealing. And there is more instruction that can obviously be offered, particularly if you're in office. Namely, style guides can be created and other things to follow. You can have feedback mechanisms right at your fingertips. Certainly I'm not suggesting the online world can't work like this. It certainly does. But those are the perception is more control, more perhaps a higher quality product because you have more control. Pay-per-project work is most common for high-end content being created, and that is typically an out-of-office agency is more aligned with on a per-project basis. Typically bids are required, which means a negotiation process back and forth, and there's certainly content strategy involved, and therefore higher demands with what's being created. So those are the methodologies that we tried to tackle. Those are the 3 primary vehicles for pricing that have been around forever. I just wanted to make some observation there. The question is, how can a company like Writer Access sort of change that perception and level the playing field and really do something unique? So as we look at some of these options here, I want to look at pricing writing services in a more holistic way. When we look at pricing a particular asset that's going to be priced, we need to look at the complexity of creating that asset. Is it range from low to high, to high or even extreme in terms of complexity? And what I've tried to do here is put together sort of a matrix which helps define this complexity. On a side note, we actually added a complexity scaling to our pricing calculator about a year ago. And customers really didn't understand it, and they weren't using it. So I think that it's hard to do this when you're in the online marketing world, in the online marketplace that we play in. But I think that there's really something to this, and it's worthy of going over this. So I look forward to your feedback on this. So really, assets need to be looked at, individually. So you need to look at, okay, how much SEO work is going to be involved in this particular project, and therefore experience required. Is this easy to find information about this? Can a generalist writer write this? Or is it difficult? Or perhaps even interviews are required if you're producing a white paper, something more complex. What's the target audience, look like? Is it industry specific, therefore particular skill sets from a writer are required? What's the knowledge level of the reader? Is it basic or is it advanced? Do you need a very sophisticated understanding of what you're writing about because you're writing to an audience level that's very high in aptitude? What style is being demanded from the writing? Basic, journalistic style or a core melon, or is it creative writing or some of the unusual styles that we talked about in the style guide presentation last week? What kind of brand infusement? Do I need to know a lot about your company, a little bit about your company? Where does that involves more time, more research? How much persuasion or copywriting is involved? Is it hard sell tactics? Therefore, a copywriting skill needs to be required. Instruction clarity. Has the customer put together super clear and concise, instructions on exactly what they want? And how long does it take to absorb all of that instruction? Again, more time being burned, difficult to onboard and get moving along through the funnel. And what's the engagement level that the customer is looking for? Does it need some creativity to it or high creativity? Does it need to be clever? Does it need to be insightful? All of these things, as you can see, affect the price. And what we're imagining building perhaps is a matrix that allows you to select some of these things and highlight some and sort of force you down the path of saying, okay, the target audience is general, not complex. So as you touch these points and make these selections, it would steer you to the right price and move you down to the right price funnel, which would be fair compensation for the work at hand. So again, at the end of the question, we might come back to this slide to talk about it, but let's move on. So the next thing to look at when pricing writing, is looking at things from the writer perspective. What kind of experience level should this writer have to perform the work and therefore justify higher hourly rates or additional compensation for their experience? And insight and ability to transform content into something that's special and high quality. So at Writer Access, we have initial screening tests that writers have to take. We can help gauge a star level, a star rating of a writer by those tests initially. If a writer's having a bad day, perhaps they're not able to answer some of these tough questions. It is a very difficult test that we have, but at least it's a starting point. That combines with a review of samples and portfolios where we manually provide a star level for all writers that we onboard. What's the SEO experience and knowledge level required for a writer? Again, to help justify costs, what kind of industry experience do they have? Are they a published author in a particular industry or topic? That becomes very interesting to us. We, of course, look at things like their social media popularity. Do they have a lot of followers and fans? All these things need to figure into the authority level, the expertise, the experience that a writer has, which should, by default, command a higher pay rate and hourly pay. We're doing our best to try to promote the skill and the proficiency of writers, but it's sometimes very difficult to do that when we don't have the full picture, or when customers don't, or when writers don't fill out their samples. But the key factor is the algorithmic scoring that we offer, in our platform. Much like Angie's List, makes you feel better when you hire an electrician that has good reviews, we feel like Writer Access can make a customer feel better in making a purchase, particularly a higher level purchase, with some of our scoring and our performance evaluation, customer reviews, and the things that we've technologically been able to do to evaluate performance. So what does this all net out to? Probably an hourly rate, in my opinion, of fair compensation. If I were to look at this overall, it would be great if we could run meters and on all work being performed as we're getting closer and closer to being able to do that, and paying writers. Sometimes they spend more money on a particular asset because it was more complex. Rightfully they should perhaps be paid for that if we wanted to work in the hourly plan. But unfortunately, customers have a lot of complexity with all of this content marketing being created, and there's a lot of additional extreme, factors to it that make pricing difficult to determine the value of an asset of one versus the other. So, writing experience needs to play into it. That's the bottom line. So, other factors to consider in pricing quality content need to be particularly editing. I'm a believer that paying a price for a content asset is one thing, and very separate from paying a professional editor to edit that content. Even our own writers within the Writer Access platform, some of our best writers that worked with us for many years now, acknowledge and agree that a second set of eyes looking at content is a key thing to really take it to the next level. Style smoothing, we call it. Getting a second set of eyes on an asset really raises the bar. I think that platforms like Writer Access have, and Xeris and TextBroker have, historically fallen short with editing. And part of the reason for that is it's very difficult to compensate an editor, for their time. Sometimes it takes a lot more time. It's really more metered by the time than it is the word, because you just don't know what you're going to inherit, and there's a lot of onboarding time. So editing needs to change, and I'm going to show you some ways we're trying to do that today. But the optimization is another factor. Obviously, in Writer Access, we have an ability for a customer to pop in keyword requirements, and we check keyword density if a customer wants to. We can look at all kinds of things. We highlight the keywords that were used. Keyword stuffing is certainly something that Google's looking closely at. But those are other factors to consider. And then, rarely, if ever, is the performance of content going back to the writer. That information is not getting back to the writer, which I think is yet another flaw. And once again, we're trying to help that and solve that problem with one of our tools called Word Vision, which we're working furiously on for 2013 to try to get writers the feedback they need to write better and to improve things. So, what have we done at Writer Access? I'm just going to show you 3 slides about some new order forms that we just launched yesterday, actually, to customers in sync with the release of the pricing guide. We want our customers to use this pricing guide. We want to get them in tune to fair market value prices, but we want our writers to be also in tune with the reality that Writer Access is an online marketplace, and customers are very much enjoying the opportunity to get the content they need created in our platform. So the question is, how do we work together to raise the quality standards, raise the price points, or even lower them, as in the case with these crowd orders? So the logic behind crowd orders is kind of interesting. Crowd orders are designed to send orders out to brand new writers that the customer does not select. This gives us the unique opportunity to send those orders to new writers in our network that are looking for A, new customers, B, an opportunity to prove themselves by completing assignments. One of the problems with Writer Access and many other platforms is it's difficult for a brand new writer to break in, to prove their value and their worth by creating exceptional content. This helps solve that problem. Both writers and Writer Access take a 10% hit on what is a standard order price, but the net of it is new writers have opportunities to pick up these orders. So the next opportunity, and the next order form, just to look at real quickly, is the standard order form. So the standard order form, nothing really changed with any of our prices, but the standard order form has a new form on it where you actually have to fill out the asset type and the industry, that then allows our engines to pop in better, in the future, better sample order instructions for that particular asset type that they can use as a reference. By gathering this information up front, we can help customers place better orders. And that is really the pain point with pricing content fairly, is that some orders do not have the proper instructions and appear to be guesswork. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the big revelation with writer access, as we try to aim towards a marketplace where you can get higher end content created, is the opportunity to enter a premium order. Here you can see I've entered an order with a 5-star writer, one order. It's a white paper, 1,500 to 2,000 words. We feel that a customer should be able to price this out, at $1, almost more than $1 a word, as a cost to them. And by making this simple for customers and allowing them to add additional compensation, we hope our customers will by default, find opportunities to pay writers fair market value prices for additional assignments and work that they're asking writers to create. At Writer Access, we're all about our customers negotiating these prices directly with writers. We have in-mail ability. Writers can discuss and talk about their projects using the in-mail platform. We also have conference call abilities, so a customer can send an opportunity out to have a conference call about a particular project using our proprietary platform that protects the personal phone numbers and information for both parties. Discussing the projects makes sense, but at the end of the day, a customer comes and enters their order, and there's a lot more details to this. Here's some of them. When you enter your order, whether it be a crowd, a standard, or a premium, you fill out a lot more than what I showed you on that initial order form. But the net of it is, you have the opportunity to add a premium additional compensation for something that deserves more compensation. In addition, the premium orders have the ability for a customer to select proofreading, junior editing, senior editing, or managing editing that is billed out at a fair and high hourly rate for the work being done. Editors are capped at that amount of time, and our platform also allows the customer to see the before and after version of the content asset being created, and to get everything that they expect from a managing editor or whatever editing service they provide. We're building these elements in to the platform because we think it's really important. So here's a couple more tips, and then we're going to open this up for discussion. For starters, what are the motivators for writers? I have a blog post in the queue right now that everyone's going to see, along with a survey that we're sending out to writers, asking them, what are your motivators? And I think that both customers and writers are going to be pleasantly surprised to learn that it's not always just money. We do have an opportunity for our customers and clients to add additional compensation post-delivery. Please excuse the spelling mistake there. I'm sure I'll hear some grief about that, but I just finished this deck right before the presentation. But what are the motivators? I am of the belief that we're going to find some very fascinating results from the survey that we send out. We'll put it to the test, but I think client recognition, peer recognition, public recognition, including testimonials and reviews about that writers, are a tremendous asset and value and motivator for writers. I think certainly the algorithmic scoring obviously motivates writers. They want to complete X number of orders, within a certain star level to help raise the bar and get up to the next level. Professional communication between customers and writers is a key element, I believe, for writers. I wish I could someday teach a course to customers on providing valuable feedback, and I'll talk about that in a second. But there's an important distinction between, literally, beating up writers and being, very critical of their work, and at the same time balancing that with positive feedback on the work that's been provided. And customers, I feel, often lose sight of that, and it really hurts to motivate writers, for future assignments with that fast-paced negative attitude. showing respect and fun and smiles, particularly with communication, can go a very long way for motivating writers. So let's look for some feedback from writers on this. The online marketplace, a couple tips for this. Clear and concise order instructions are critical. And one quick footnote on that, what we're seeing happening, and this is particularly true with premium orders that have been placed in our platform before, is that unless the proper instructions are provided, unless a writer has a relatively high degree of certainty that they can meet all the expectations without having to guess, then they're willing to pick an order up and to complete it for the price that's been proposed and or agreed to by both parties. The challenge becomes when there aren't clear instructions and where a writer is left up to guesswork and has no relative uncertainty whether they'll actually ever get paid for a project because of ambiguity within the orders, etc. So this is the biggest challenge that I think we all face in understanding that arriving at a price is actually a critical element of providing proper instructions. And that means professional email communication. And I think that another big pain point in the marketplace with this whole pricing structure is properly onboarding new writers. And that means taking the time to provide feedback, constructive and positive feedback to them, as they are onboarded for new projects and assignments. And then, of course, trying different writers to find the right style, is another critical element. And a lot of people have looked to casting call historically to do that. But I was trying to explain why I don't think casting call is a good idea, and that is because unless you're selected, you've lost the opportunity. So a customer may only want to hire 1 or 2 writers. 30 people apply. That means 28 or 29 of them are not going to get the gig. So there's a low probability for success. Whereas I am trying in the future to move trying writers out to the crowd order platform, where you actually pay a writer, try a few different writers out, and particularly new writers, and you place crowd orders to them. So I look forward to any feedback on that. I think it's a better way to test writing. Even if you put the same order out to like 3 different writers to try each of them out, fairly compensating them, particularly if you're looking at one of our new packages, which you're going to see load up today as well. We have some site modifications going live. And we're going to try to sell more packages, more consistent work for writers at fair market prices. So, so a couple of other tips. So I've created a few wizards, and I think they're pretty savvy and worthy of considering here. The problem I'm trying to solve with all of the wizards you're about to see are the challenge that writers have in interpreting and understanding what customers are looking for. That, to me, is the weak point. And I think if we can better that part of the process and cycle, we can get better work created and even pay writers more with either additional compensation or premium orders that are placed. So the first wizard that I created about 4 or 5 months ago was called a Creative Brief Wizard. And honestly, it was too heavy duty for customers. You can go through it. You can find it either on the public version of our website, or it is available now on the back end of the website for customers and clients that are working inside the platform. And not only does it actually deliver and create for you a PDF that has all these answers that you fill out, but it also has some other interesting archiving opportunities in a library, a file library, inside where you actually place orders. So you can create one creative brief wizard that explains your products and your company and what types of assets you expect to be ordering, what the target audience is all about. You guys can go through this. They're all 6-step little widgets and wizards that actually generate a PDF on the fly. So they're great tools and great resources, I think, help align the goals of both writers and customers. The next one that I created was a style guide wizard, and I launched this last week. And that's available as well, as mentioned, and for everyone, even somebody that's not doing business with us. So what I did is I trimmed down the Creative Wizard a bit and just sort of wanted to get more granular with the actual content assets being created. So it's a little easier to fill out, and it's not quite as intimidating, and I thought that would be a real winner. But the next one I'm filling out is literally all drag and drop with optional instructions. And this one should be good to go by the end of next week. Yep, I'm working on a lot of things, but the net of it is, this is where you drag single phrases into boxes and paint a picture for a writer with optional instructions. So I'm pretty excited about that. And the other thing we're tweaking on this, which is why this is the launch for today, is we think that we can actually help customers even more by asking them, what kind of asset are you creating? Blog posts? Okay, we're going to have you grab these keyword phrases that best summarize the options for blogging. So we're really working on some cool stuff that will hopefully help better align everyone. So there ends my presentation, as exhausting as that may have been for people listening in. I'm excited to get some feedback. I'm going to now go over to where the questions have come in, hopefully, and I'll look forward to some feedback from people on the book and everything else we've talked about today. So Casey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, great. I think you took a very complex subject once again and presented a way of looking at it, which I always appreciate. I don't know if you want to wait and field some questions from the audience first, or if you want kind of my initial feedback.
Yeah, look, give me some initial feedback while everyone's gathering their thoughts and entering their questions, and then I'm going to fire through the questions. Is there any slide you want me to go to, by the way, which would be helpful for anything you want to talk about?
I did want to note one thing. In complexity in price writing services, I think if you look at per word at the bottom and high, is that supposed to be 30 cents possibly instead of 3 cents? You see where I'm looking?
No, that's 3 cents. 3 cents per word. But if you'd like to pay, I see what you're saying. Yes. That's 30 cents. Yes, sorry.
Okay, just so there's not any confusion.
Yep.
So on this slide, so the audience understands where I'm coming from. I've worked with writer access on different levels. I've managed content for my own clients that I've had produced through writer access, as well as I've done some consulting in terms of the style guide and the pricing guide. But separate from writer access, I'm also a writer. So I feel like I have a fairly round perspective of what we're talking about here, and I'm probably going to be coming from different directions in that respect. That said, when you, as a customer, I'm looking at this, and when you're looking at the different complexities that are involved in a particular writing assignment, you also had a chart that showed how you're evaluating your writers to see how well they meet each of these complexity categories. And is that the next slide, I believe? It might even be the next one.
Yes, let me go to that one. Here you go.
Okay, great. Here. So I was just curious, when you're rating the writer based on star levels, what if their experience is 2-star in some areas and 5-star in other areas? So they ace, for example, the test scores. They have a basic portfolio and a generalist industry experience.
So the question is, what's the criterion for 5-star, or?
Well, for a 5-star level writer, do they have to meet? They have to meet all this criterion.
Yes.
And I'm assuming a 2-star writer would pretty much, just have what we see here. But when you get into 3-star and 4-star, it would seem like their experience might vary, where they have some characteristics of a 5-star writer, as well as some characteristics of a 2-star writer. And it's so it may not be precisely as you have listed here.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see
I agree.
Rate them.
Yes, I would describe the last year and a half of algorithmic development as one of the greatest challenges in proficiency assessment. To give you some ideas of the complexity, which will tune people in for what we have to do here at Writer Access, how should writers be penalized for having a bad day and creating some lousy content that got terrible reviews from customers? How should we handle duplicate content issues and copyscape originality verification infringements, and how should that affect star levels? You know, how are star levels even aligned with hourly rates, which is probably the biggest problem we have, when the online marketplace, you know, wants to stay in this price per word mentality? You know, are we able? Is anyone in writer access currently making $75 an hour for their time? Yes, writers have. I know for a fact, you know, been rewarded for super high-end projects that sometimes came through as premium orders before we even had premium orders with super rush deadlines. And remember, we've been doing this for 12 years now. But you know, these are complex issues, Casey, and it's tough to, you know, generalize about a star level. But I will tell you this. We've drawn the line in the sand and are currently going to put a lot more weight moving forward, like as in the next month, before the end of the year for sure, on client reviews. We have our clients right now they have three choices. Was it below my expectations? Did it meet my expectations, or did it exceed my expectations? And to increase your star level, historically with our algorithm, it really mattered with how many total projects you were completing within that star level. Once you completed X number of assignments, you then became eligible to raise your star ranking and be eligible for the next star level up. And then once you went through another X number of projects at that level, you could improve your qualifications. I think that's the wrong strategy. I don't think quantity is the right way to evaluate star levels. I think that instead, client reviews need to have a lot more weight and a lot more impact if you're going to be eligible for higher paid assignments. So there's some give and take that we need to have with writers if we're going to help justify those $75 per hour rates. Because frankly, not every one of our 5-star writers is capable or eligible of justifying a $75 rate in every imaginable topic, right? Some writers are only experts in certain topics. You know, so that's another factor that needs to play in with star rating. You know, maybe you should only be eligible for star rating in a particular industry, which is how, you know, that would make more sense to me. You're proven, you're published, you have recommendations. So these are just some of the complexities that we have to, you know, rattle around in the cage here and to try to sort out. Does that answer your question, though?
It does. I understand. I think inherently there's a complexity to this, and you know, this matrix helps simplify it. I've worked with clients who have a good grasp of this complexity, and you know, they tend to be bigger marketing firms. They tend to be larger companies that understand the more they invest in clarifying these areas, the better quality work they're going to get, the more aligned it will be with their goals. But I've also worked with clients that are new to this space, and something like this could seem extremely overwhelming unless they're working with a content manager or someone who could guide them along. So I'm wondering, for those clients that are approaching this for the first time or haven't done a lot of this, what are some key areas you recommend they focus on to know what type of writer to hire? I mean, if they're not, you mentioned the creative brief was a little bit bulky. Have you, through that process, kind of identified some specific areas that a customer should focus on?
Yeah, it's a classic Casey question that has complex answers to it. You're not capable of not thinking complex because of your big brain, so I applaud it and appreciate it. Customers, you know, customers really, I have a question for you about that question, right? And it comes from a question that somebody asked me, and I want your response to it because I think it's spot on for what you're talking about. Okay, so here it is. So, great question. So Byron, I'm very pleased to see your in-depth analysis of pricing and truly enjoy spending almost all my writing time with Writer Access. Do you have concerns about the very low rates your competitors are charge customers compared to your substantially higher rates? For example, Medium Project at 10 cents per word is several times higher than Text Broker, Constant Contact, and others charge. Are you concerned that your price points will scare potential customers away? Thanks. So this is wonderful. It's a concern from a writer that our customers could go away as we try to move the bell curve up, right? Sorry, I'm sneezing. I just didn't want to sneeze on everyone on the phone.
Well, bless you, even though I didn't hear it.
So, you know, it's like the customers need to, you know, really understand what they're buying and how much time is involved in producing the work that they're demanding. The biggest concern for me isn't what price points we pop up, because we're going to continue with crowd orders and standard orders. What we're trying to make, which I think are very inexpensive prices, you know, much less than the 10 cents, you know, 30 cents, dollar per word. I mean, we don't command those rates for standard orders. What we're trying to do is to take premium orders and to become the signature place on the web where you can actually find writers to produce this higher-end work. We're also trying to help educate customers, you know, on what they need to do to get a high-quality piece produced. And to me, Casey, that's the pain point right there. That's the problem. I don't know. We thought that our voice recording, we spent a lot of money and time on trying to launch voice recordings because sometimes your voice communicates a lot more about what you want in a project. We have two ways customers can can communicate with their voice what they want. One is with a digitally recorded voicemail, which they can attach to an order or send to a writer to listen to. Or second of all, a conference call, again, protected, you know, with their identity. So I think that's the wave of the future. You know, I think that you should be able to, look, if you're going to have a white paper created by an agency, which companies used to do with us all the time, we have a kickoff call. It's a 1-hour brainstorming session. We learn the intricacies. You know, we talk with them. They send us a bunch of stuff. They upload the documents. You know, there's a trust that they're contracting us, a professional agency, to complete the work. And they're going to pay $5,000 per white paper, you know, because they need it in 3 weeks, and it's, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 words, and they need a managing editor on it. And in addition to at least one writer, they need interviews with their customers. You know, it's a heavy-duty piece. Why shouldn't we be able to do that at Writer Access? And I believe we're trying to facilitate a platform that can be done. You know, but customers need to pay for that service. You know, that's a complicated, complex order, and one that is you know, it requires a lot more attention. So we know how to do it. We have experience knowing how to do it, and I want to be the leader of not only, you know, this marketplace that's generating thousands of content assets every month that are really solid blog posts, paying fair rates to all of our writers, which I believe we do. You know, but I also want to give opportunities for writers to raise their game and to take it to the next level.
I'll say this about the audience member's question is I researched a lot of different companies before coming to Writer Access, both for my client and also just for my own information as a writer. And there were several that on the surface looked good, and then when I wanted to see something from the Better Business Bureau, I just needed additional verification they could have provided. There were more, and actually the majority, that wouldn't verify that they had U.S.-based writers or native speakers, that they had any type of testing to verify the writer quality. So I think that it's hard to compete if you're talking about clients that are, what I was saying before, unaware of this space, and they're just shopping price. It's like anything else. They're not going to see the value, which is different than price, of what a company like Writer Access is offering. But if you shop on value and you have a clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish with your content and you have some idea of what's involved to produce it, then these prices are based on the value proposition and they're justified. So for the writer who's asking, sometimes it's a matter of educating the client as to what's involved, and I think the tools that are being presented here are a good start.
We're getting there. Let's go to some questions. Thanks, Casey. Awesome feedback and insight to these issues. Some people didn't receive a copy of the price guide. I'll figure out what's going on. You can actually get the pricing guide on our website, on the new site's launching, so everyone will have access to that. Not sure what happened. Somebody sent me an email this morning saying they had to fill out their email address again to get the download. Yeah, welcome to marketing. Sorry about that, but it's just how we keep track of who we send this to and who downloaded it. So we already have your information anyway, so pop your email in, and that's all you'll need to do actually with the new site design is pop in your email again and you'll get it. The engagement start, somebody had a good question there. You know, they said engagement row of this chart we're looking at, how are you quantifying creativity level? So in my mind, you know, creativity, engagement might involve, you know, I need the writer to create maybe some charts or some graphics, or better yet, I need the writer to drop in aphorisms or, you know, some other complex creativity that would add some engagement level to the quality of content being created. So I'll try to fill in those middle blanks. I would like somebody to give me some feedback on whether they think this chart, this complexity chart, it deserves to be and should necessarily be in the pricing guide. My vote is yes, it should. I think it's a really cool way to kind of summarize, you know, how you should price something. So I look forward to your feedback on that. Oh, the next question was, never received my download. Okay, we talked about that. Everybody can just get it. Should 4-star be listed? Yes. Okay, we got that. Thanks for the correction on that.
If I may say something about the engagement issue, I think that you alluded to this earlier, that there are analytics that need to be developed to better assess how content is performing. But that means that the writer has to have access to those analytics. So even if the customer is doing everything right, if the writer doesn't know what those are, they don't know, whether their content is actually performing or not. Additionally, it's really hard sometimes. So let's say you have a blog article, to bring this to the real world, and you have at the bottom of your blog article, you have your social share button, so Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and so forth. And you're measuring engagement by that social sharing. So that's kind of a rudimentary way. It's a key performance indicator that may work for you. If I write an article for you and you see a high level of engagement, that partly could be because of your own efforts as a client. You could have designed a beautiful website. You could be sending a huge amount of traffic to that particular blog. So there are factors beyond my writing that could be influencing that share. But conversely, if you're not seeing a high level of engagement, it could also be that your website isn't being found, there isn't traffic, so forth. So I think it becomes very difficult for the writer to, much as we want to link the quality of our work directly to the metrics being used by the client, unless there's assurance that what we're doing is actually being measured correctly. So I think when you talk about engagement, often the bottom line is it's really who's purchasing the content and how engaging they think it is.
I agree. It's a painful reality, but I do think that the secret sauce behind quality content is what is the engagement factor of that content. Does it deliver those aha moments? Is it fun to read? Is it, engaging? Do you want to share it with other people, much like you share an image in Pinterest or, that is, engagement is everything, and we're getting good at testing that engagement, the performance of engagement with metrics and readability and return visitation and all the other metrics. But you could definitely look at it both ways. But I want to get to some of these questions because they're really good. So let me just start at the top. I've tried. We don't have a lot of time left, so let me try to peel through them. And thanks, everyone, so much for all these great questions. Okay, so this is a good question from a customer. Writer selection. Why can't we select both crowd, 5-star writers, and writers in a list that we have developed? So what we did with crowd orders, we want those crowd orders to go to new writers, or at least go to the crowd. If there's not a new writer, it goes to new writers first, and then it goes to a crowd. But the difference between crowd and standard is with standard, that's where you can send orders to your love list. Like you've earned that privilege to send them to your love list. If you want a 10% discount, it's got to be somebody that you don't know. It's all about testing new writers and getting orders out to new writers, which we're desperately trying to do because they need the credentials to end up being selected. Because if they haven't completed any orders, customers frown upon them. Is the PowerPoint available for your presentation? Yes. Go to Writer Access after this. First of all, I have to correct all the spelling mistakes and the 30-cent mistakes, so I'll do that, I promise. Thanks for your patience. I know a lot of writers on board. Bad reflection of our company, I apologize, but I do these very intensely, and my brain powers are working great about an hour before the presentation. So there's that. I'm a writer. This is a really good question. I'm a writer currently ranked as a 3. Since I began working with Writer Access, I'm now working at a digital marketing agency, and I have 10 months of experience, and I've raised my SEO strategy up to certainly a higher level. You know, how can this ever be reflected at Writer Access? That is a real challenge because often time elapses, and I think we need to address that. So let me think deeply about that, Amy, and I think it's a super question, and it's something that is just a reality that you're constantly growing as a writer and advancing your career, and sometimes the platform doesn't allow you to keep track of that.
What would be possibly interesting, Byron, is like you have that drag and drop wizard, to have something like that for the writer qualifications, so that the customer is actually able to place what emphasis they put on those categories, you know, and then they have an algorithm that generates a writer and a pay from that.
Yep. I keep thinking about Angie's List and validation and certification. I mean, if a writer is out making $50 an hour at an SEO firm and can validate that, you know, why can't they get that information to that? Why can't we call up and validate that? That would immediately, that's the trigger. That's what everybody wants. So maybe we're getting closer to that with this discussion today. It's all about the validation. Here's a great question from a tech writer. How do you rate a tech writer with DITA XML experience? This combines not only authoring but technical ability to manage content from output in the digital deliverables. First of all, you know, we need to do a much better job in evaluating the proficiency level of technical writers in general. I think tech writers have had a really poor platform by which they're represented. And that's partly the fault of people like me that are not out there building new methodology to evaluate the proficiency of tech writers. So give me some time on that. But I can tell you right now that tech writers have an important future both in our marketplace, you know, and on the web in general. You know, technical writing expertise is hard to find, and it's in high demand. And, you know, therefore, we should be doing a better job. But there's so many different skill sets to evaluate you in, and it's like a different list of industries. It becomes its own separate drop-down with technical proficiency in different topics. And with the expansion of mobile, I mean, it's just really hard, bottom line. Hope that answers your question, but look for some advancement there. I really believe that, you know, I'm into it. So count me on your bandwagon and send me some personal emails saying, how's that tech marketplace going, Byron? Will product page content for e-commerce always fall into the low complexity category? Good point. Also, given the tight merchandising budgets with online retailers, how do you think your rates align with their strategy depending on their product versus revenue for products? The problem is, you know, most e-commerce platforms have so many products. They're kind of you know, product descriptions are like a commodity to them. We have customers that have put through 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, up to 10,000 orders for product descriptions, and they've had multiple writers working on them, which doesn't have that has problems with consistency with tone and style and voice from description to description. So you need to bring in an outside editor to bring the same consistency, and it depends on what the product is. That's another variable, but. You know, I think that for specialty products and/or specialty style requirements, you as a writer should be commanding a higher price, you know, a higher price point, you know, and a higher star level selection for high quality product descriptions. So, you know, maybe that offers some thought for you, but you know, it's a tough one. You know, so here's somebody that says, no writer makes a living at $75 an hour. I don't know what they're saying. Like, I know writers that make livings at $75 an hour. Or, you know, are they saying that no writer at Writer Access makes it? I'm not sure what the question is, but it was an interesting statement. I hope there are writers making much more than $75 an hour. You know, step into an ad agency and you'll see copywriters, you know, that are creating content that moves small mountains for companies and corporations, making a lot more than $75 an hour. So I'm not sure what your position is on that. Clarify it. Maybe we can help you there. And Casey, feel free to chime in with any of these, but I'm just trying to speed. I'm trying to speed through these. So I concur on the fact on factoring in customer reviews more heavily. Perhaps you can give them more visible or mandatory field to enter their comments after accepting an article. Spot on. The post that I'm writing, I have this new theory. We have this thing called additional compensation that we ask customers, but we're not asking them at that point whether they would be willing to write a review. And I think it could be positioned really nicely saying, you know, what kind of recognition and praise would you like to pass on to your writer? You know, review, testimonial, free, you know, and a big motivator or financial reward or both, you know. So spot on, Alan, for that comment. I think you hit the nail on the head. Let me get that on the task list and send me a reminder for that if you want. Good spot here to take for you to take leadership positioning with writer crowd to get rid of low-price competitors. Writing is like everything else. You get what you pay for. Agree on that. You know, to the other writers' comment, you know, Randy, it's you know, you can't sever this. I think we're gracefully trying to, you know, put in front of people the word premium. And by the way, we stewed on that name order form a really long time. We were like, you know, maybe it should just be for like bulk orders too, that you should be able to add, you know, additional price on, or maybe you just want to pay a standard writer more, you know. So it's like, you know, no, let's call it premium because we're delivering something that's a higher value. And to your point, you should get what you pay for. So I like the leadership position, but I don't want to stop paying hundreds and hundreds of writers the money that we pay them to change our model like overnight. So we're trying to be the leader by example, by having webinars like this and caring about these topics.
For those who are not writers that are listening to this webinar, the $5 articles often are either outsourced, they're contracted to people who are not U.S.-based and not native speakers. They're spun, which they have software that generates 7 different versions of the same content that was created, or they might not be taken through Copyscape, so you're actually looking at duplicate content, or they're not customized. So they, you know, kind of do a factory of the same type of article, and, you know, just whether it's highly relevant or not, it's what gets sold to the customer. I've had a lot of clients who started that way and quickly recognized that it's not to their advantage. But the reason people purchased those primarily at the beginning was because they just wanted something for the Google algorithms.
Yeah.
But with the Panda release and the Penguin release, I mean, Google is becoming more and more savvy about these things, and I think the market's going to kind of work itself out in that respect because those articles won't even serve the purpose of the algorithm. They definitely don't serve the purpose of the people reading it.
Exactly. And that's a, you know, we're going to be having a discussion in 3 to 6 months as a group about attribution and where it's all going. And, you know, as you know now, it's sort of like, you know, first name, last initial of all these writers we're representing. I hope there's a day that we can actually display and be proud and be a proud agent for writers, much like illustrators have agents that represent a small body of writers, illustrators. I hope that Writer Access can take it to that level and we can have loyal, high-end writers that want to work exclusively with us and actually send their clients to Writer Access to negotiate, you know, prices for contracts and payment plans. So that's the vision of where I want to go. But on your point about Google and Panda, Casey, a great comment from you know, that's a writer that said, I'm incapable of producing low research, low quality writing. You know, it takes me time to write any project, and I feel it's important to be involved with a service that knows and respects this. Quality to me is the most important. Anyway, I'm appreciative of these discussions and look forward to growing the Writer Access. Any advice and guidance would be great. And that was from Wendy. So, thank you so much for that comment, and completely respect, the challenge that you're having. On that note, Wendy, so I have literally been embarrassed with the pricing feature on Writer Access for a year and a half. We bring in these customers with I'm being honest, and here I am, the CEO of the company, telling you this. We bring in customers, with what I believe are really low points for writing, low pricing for content. The customers are not seeing the premium order forms on that pricing until today. I have to go to the site right now to see if it's up, but we have put up and are now going to go public with the reality. Let me see if it's up. I think it is. With the reality that it's not up yet, but it will be up today. We want to go public with the fact that you can order a crowd order, a standard order, or a premium order. It is time to go public with our mission and our desire to get companies knowing that Writer Access is capable of producing premium content. And for someone like Wendy, that's what she's interested in, and that's all she's interested in. So hats off to Wendy for not wanting to do the lower tiered assignments. But we have to offer it all. We have to be competitive with some of these engines if we're going to follow the opportunity and the dream we have to be a major content player in the world. Those are my visions, and let's start with the United States and see if we can make it work here. But I think that if Writer Access can position itself as a mid-tiered marketplace, and when I think top tier, I'm thinking like Demand Media, publicly traded. I don't think Demand Media is producing that great content. I want Writer Access to be more of a boutique that's capable of producing those $2,000, $5,000 white papers, or the homepage copy rightfully paid at $1,000, even though it's 200 words. Really good work, because that's what I've been involved with my 25 years in the advertising and marketing business, and that's what we're aiming towards. Let's see. Can writers have control of how content is performing if the client provides the keywords and stipulates the frequency of their use? Some clients insist on keyword stuffing. Good point. No, to answer your question, Monica. I mean, unfortunately, what I'm hoping is that Word Vision is a free tool that we give away for all customers, and writers and customers will have the ability to bring writers into Word Vision as an option to see how the content's performing. Stay in tune with us. We may have a revolutionary advancement for content performance. And by the way, that anybody can go in and get a free look at Word Vision right now. No problem. So go have at it and go set up a free trial. Just know that we're going to be launching some major stuff over there in the next couple of months before the end of the year, hoping that in January we can launch Word Vision as a free service to these 3,000 plus customers that we brought into Writer Access. So just know that that's in our pipeline. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so let's see. Are writers expected to create content for the infographics or actually design the infographics? No. We think Writer Access should be narrowly focused in content creation and not graphics or other such things. That's not to say that we're not looking at that marketplace closely, because I think it's a wonderful complement to what we're doing with writers. So, subtle hint there to stay tuned. But the net of it is no. But those are important content assets that do need to be created. Let's see. Yes, the chart should be included in the grid. Thanks for the positive feedback there. Writer Access is in the business of educating the public on the difference, by the way, quality and cheap. That is true. Thanks, Byron. Got it. Okay. I think this is kind of the questions. I think we're probably all exhausted at this point. So, Casey, any concluding strokes of pure genius that you might add more of in this particular?
That's a pretty high bar, I'd have to say.
Yeah, there you go. You'll rise to it.
But in summary, I just think that the more educated the clients are and the writers are about these issues, and the better you can improve that communication, then the clearer it becomes what the value of a product is, and the price will follow it. So that's what I'm taking away from it, is that this is an effort to educate.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I didn't meet that milestone, huh? I'll work on it.
No.
I'll try to think of something brilliant
you know,
in the
sometimes
meantime.
I think you did, because it is all about simplicity here, and education is the key, both with customers and writers. Hopefully the price guide, you know, gets passed around. I'm hoping writers really encourage customers to download it, you know, as a reference point. You know, we all need to be careful with it. We'll certainly do our job at Writer Access to push it out to customers, but you know, hopefully it's a starting point, you know, for everyone. So, well, listen, Casey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right on. So, and thanks everyone for tuning in to this 34th webinar. Please send me some feedback. Love it on Twitter. It makes me smile. At Byron White on Twitter. Makes my wife happy too, which is important. And you know, just see if you can get me any feedback on the guide, or more educational, or more ideas. So thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Until next month. Hope you're a little bit smarter, better, faster, and wiser, and more educated on the topic of pricing. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next month.